Each spring, when you go outside for a walk, you see the trees starting to flower and bees starting to forage. Birds know exactly when there is the highest food availability for their chicks. But how do they know the right time? And what if the trees start flowering earlier? Do the bees still know when to start foraging? And do the birds still have enough food for their chicks? In other words, what if the right time for one species is not the right time for another species? The timing of biological events is called phenology. Multiple mechanisms are involved in phenology, namely temperature, precipitation, and day length. For temperature-induced phenology, you might think of bees that become active at a certain spring temperature. Many tropical tree species determine the right moment of flowering by the precipitation regime. An example of a phenological event where day length plays an important role is the migration of birds. Some bird species start their migration at a certain day length. The temperature and precipitation-induced mechanisms are sensitive for climate change. Because climate change does not affect all phenological mechanisms, mismatches may occur between two interacting species that have different phenological mechanisms. A phenological mismatch appears when timed events of interacting species are out of sync. Some species might cue on a different mechanism, and therefore can change their phenology faster than other species. When phenological events are out of sync, it can have disastrous effects for the species involved, but also for the whole food web and ecosystem. A mismatch which can occur is a plant-pollinator mismatch. When plants start to bloom earlier, but pollinators such as butterflies do not emerge earlier, it causes a mismatch between species. When this mismatch occurs, plants are not able to reproduce, and butterflies have no food. Both species therefore are affected by the mismatch. Without pollination, plants are unable to grow fruits, which is impacting species that are reliant on these food sources. Not only nature has to deal with this mismatch, but also food production for humans is negatively affected by this mismatch, fruit production for instance. Migrating birds and the insect peak abundance is another mismatch. Migration of birds is often cued by the day length, while the emergence of insects is cued by temperature. As mentioned earlier, day length is not influenced by climate change, but temperature is. A migrating bird, for example the flycatcher, can therefore miss the insect peak abundance in his breeding area, because they arrive too late to benefit from the insect peak abundance. Therefore, the chicks will miss the period of high food availability, which lowers their chance of survival. Mismatches not only occur on land, but also occur in oceans. Because of climate change, the oceanographic conditions change. Changes in temperature and chemistry alter the timing of spring phytoplankton blooms, with consequences to the food availability of other species. When there is a mismatch, the population size of zooplankton is smaller, and this has consequences for the rest of the food web. Since a lot of species in the oceans are directly or indirectly dependent on zooplankton, as can be seen in the figure. These are 3 examples of phenological mismatches that might occur due to climate change. However, there are of course many more. Can you think of another phenological mismatch that might occur? In conclusion, phenological mismatches, driven by climate change, make the symphony of nature play out of sync. It disrupts the synchrony of biological events among species. These disparities, such as plant-pollinator mismatches and bird-insect peak mismatches, threaten ecosystems and food webs, impacting species survival and human food production across both land and ocean environments. We can try to dampen the phenological consequences of climate change by taking conservation measures. However, the real solution lies in the mitigation of climate change. Only by stopping this rapid global change, we can secure the future for our biodiversity. Every 60 seconds, a minute passes. So now is the time to take action.